When my family and I arrived here at St Peter's, we found a congregation who were really enthusiastic, really keen to grow ministry with children and young people. They were passionate about doing it but didn't necessarily have the resources or the know-how to go about it. So we've been on an exciting journey. Over the last 2 years, we've just seen God do some amazing things in growing our ministry to children and young people. So I'm Phil and I'm the vicar here at this amazing church, St Peter's, Morley. The first thing that we wanted to do was to write children and young people into the vision and strategy at the heart of what we do as a church. And so we have a vision here to be a healthy, growing, fruitful community of faith that inspires and equips this generation and the next to follow Jesus here in Morley. And a vision's all well and good, but it's just words on a piece of paper. We then set to work trying to implement that vision for the next generation in Morley into everything we do. Right at the start of the first lockdown, Easter 2020, we filmed our Sunday morning services pre-recorded in our home, which meant that me and Abby and the kids were doing church together in the house. And so that was able to set the culture right away that children are not only allowed to come along and be involved, but they can actually contribute to what we do as worship. And what we saw was that enabled families at home to be able to engage and think that's the kind of church where our children could get involved.
Testing, 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 testing.
So once we got to a point where we felt confident that we were ready to invite children and families and young people, we had to do some thinking about, well, how do we make it accessible? How do we make it suitable for them? Children change the way that worship happens. They make noise, they move around, and of course they do because they're children. One of the things that's been amazing here is the church family have been so genuinely welcoming. And when children and families have come, they've been like, it's okay, be yourselves and get involved. You know, my children run around at the front here sometimes, and everybody is just so patient with that. And that's the culture of this church, and it's such an important culture to have. For the first few months, I led the kids ministry during the service. So partway through the service, I would take the kids out to their groups and we'd do the session together while someone else here in church did the preaching. And what that said was the children are a priority. They matter just as much, if not more sometimes, than us as grown-ups. And so we want to invest in them, help them to grow in faith. And the beauty of that was that other people came along to help, and then over time took on responsibility for leading in my place. And so we're able to model leadership with kids and raise up leaders to get involved. Throughout all of this time, the PCC were working in the background to think about how could they resource and equip this ministry to grow. And we together came up with a vision to employ an associate leader here who would have leadership responsibility across the whole church, but with a specific focus to invest in children and young people.
So one of the reasons that I think we've seen growth in our ministry of children and young people is because it's not a side project. It's not something that happens separately to what else is going on in the life of the church. And because of that, we are seeing more and more children and family coming to be part of this community, which is really encouraging. So I'm Beth and I am the associate leader here at St Peter's Morley. When I arrived, my priority was to make sure that there was a good rhythm, particularly for us on a Sunday morning with our children's groups. Now, they'd already began before I arrived, but we wanted to make sure that they were continuing to grow, be healthy and fruitful. And so with our tots and our kids on a Sunday morning, we continued to develop them, continued to ask for more volunteers, and we saw amazing growth in those first stages. Investing in our volunteer team is so important. I want it to be like a family where people want to come and belong to this bigger picture of this exciting adventure that we get to go on with these children. So I made sure that I met with our volunteer team individually and then created spaces for us to meet throughout the year, for us to do some training together and to worship and pray for our ministry together. I think one of the ways that kids feel welcome here is that they feel invested in. I think from the moment they walk through the door, there's an amazing atmosphere where the church family are really welcoming of them. and we do regularly get new people coming to visit us too. So that's really important to us that we have that culture. We have services that are appropriate for our children and actually help them to feel part of the bigger church family, and that's through an all-age service that we call Worship Together, where we do things slightly differently and more creatively and do things for all ages as part of that. One of the amazing things that I've had the opportunity to do is to invest in schools work, to have really great relationships with our 3 local primary schools, and to go and to share good news about Jesus in those contexts. And one amazing way that we've seen that have a domino effect is by children seeing us in school and actually coming along to church off the back of that, wanting to ask their parents if they can come and experience church, which has been so encouraging to see. And as a result of all this, over the last 2 years, we've seen amazing growth, beginning with 3 or 4 children on a Sunday to now seeing 18, 19, 20 children and young people here at church worshipping God together. It's been amazing to see all that God has been doing at St Peter's Morley, and we are so thankful for his goodness.
So I think what we have to remember is that God is good, he's alive and active, and he's growing his church. He's able to do more than we can possibly ask or imagine, because Jesus Christ is the good news. He wants children and young people to come to know him, and he is doing it. He is growing his church.